Welcome to Wheel Talk. I'm Brian. This is my husband, Patrick. I have read the books. He has not. Episode 6, The Flame of Tar Valon. While you were out at work last night, your dad and your mom called me. They were so excited to talk to me about the episode. I had not watched it yet. I know that's embarrassing, but your parents were so excited to talk to me about this episode, which I loved so much. In a little bit, we are going to loop them in on a live stream. That's going to be fun. I'm excited. Let's just hear your general thoughts about episode 6 and what you thought.
I really liked it. I think it's really interesting getting to see the internal politics of the White Tower at play. I kind of mentioned this in an earlier episode. We first just get to see the sort of cracks in the monolith of the Aes Sedai with Leandrin, and you get to see a little bit of that at play and a little bit of those whispers and stuff. But then actually getting there and getting to see like what that looks like in action and like the sort of what they have on each other and against each other, who's aligned with who, and all of the secrets within there. Very cool and very fascinating to watch and play out. There's a sort of natural wanting to compare things to Game of Thrones.
Sure.
It's a very different story, I think, whereas Game of Thrones is all about the politics over who's in control of this land. This is a little more classic adventure tale of a party questing together to achieve a larger goal. Those comparisons sort of fall apart. I think this was the first episode that I think could rightfully be sort of compared to an episode of Game of Thrones, because so much of the episode was the Amyrlin Seat. Is she losing power? Is she gaining power? Who's backstabbing who? Who's going
the power
around?
politics.
Yes, and
you got the first real taste of power politics.
Yeah, which isn't really been what this show has been about up to this point. This has been more Tolkien-esque in its approach of a group of adventurers going on this grand quest of good versus evil. Good versus evil was completely absent from Game of Thrones. There wasn't really any of that at play unless you're talking about the biggest scope of like death versus life. Everything else about that show was steeped in shades of gray, whereas in Wheel of Time, I mean, there's literally the Dark One.
There's a duality that we're dealing with, and you're on one side or the other.
Yes, and it is very much, you know, the hobbits versus Sauron, and this is the two rivers underdogs versus the armies of the shadow.
So you're saying when we get to the White Tower politics, it starts to show you more of the nuance about not everyone's good or bad, not everyone's on one side or the other.
As much as the Reds are their own little pit of vipers, they're on ultimately the same side as the Blues and the Greens and the others, which is against the Dark One. They're all on the same side.
But there are different ways to fight the same thing.
There's that internal power structure over how it should be done and all this stuff.
What a lot of people loved about episode 5, we both agreed that it felt like things slowed down in the last episode, and people made the argument, yes, but look at all this wonderful world building we're getting from Tar Valon. And I agree, I enjoyed episode 5, but world building we get in Tar Valon, I got that from episode 6. Like, I think we could have used more of that in episode 5. If we were going to dedicate an episode to stuff going on in Tar Valon, I kind of think Swan should have been brought in sooner. Let's talk about the possibly magical objects in this episode.
Yes, I would love to do that.
Yeah, let's start with what we have named the Masha Dagger. What are your thoughts on Moiraine severing Mat from the Masha Dagger, black thing coming onto her mouth and then being enclosed in the dagger? What is your overall take on what happened?
Okay. I'm getting the sense the one power may be a bit of a misnomer. That there might be other powers. There was definitely something with that dagger. That dagger is enchanted or possessed by some sort of dark magic. We literally see it. It almost sort of looks like what happens when Logain channels.
It does, and I think that's maybe confusing.
I don't know. There's some sort of dark mojo placed on the Masha Dagger that she's literally pulling out of him, and she says it's feeding off of him and he's feeding off of it, and all this stuff is going on there. So maybe that is the one power infused in this dagger. Maybe it's just Mashadar. Maybe there's just a small piece of Mashadar inside there. I don't know.
I think that's interesting.
There's a lot happening with this dagger.
And without giving anything away, I do think the thing Moiraine was pulling out of Mat's mouth, that we saw Mat vomiting in the last episode, I think? Maybe the episode before. We've seen Mat vomiting this black...
this thing.
Yes. When Moiraine drew it out in particular, it looked like, you said, Logain's channeling.
Yes.
It looked like the male half of the power that has been tainted.
It's clearly some sort of magical thing, but if there's only one power, it's not possessed by science. It's possessed by...
That'd be weird.
Like, it is magic in its nature.
Yeah.
So if it's not the one power, then what is it?
What is it? Yeah, I don't think they've given us an answer to that. I get that you have that question.
Yes.
That makes sense. I still really liked liked Moiraine drawing that out of him and the thing latching on her mouth, and the total serenity with which she just passed it away from her mouth into the dagger was like, oh, she's been through some stuff before that this doesn't even faze her.
I'll tell you what it seems like it is, and where I think it's going, and you're gonna have zero reference for this, but it seems like the symbiote of Venom in the Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Like, that doesn't mean anything to you, but for your viewers, there's probably a lot like me that are going like, yes, it's the symbiote, it's the symbiote.
I bet there are. I bet there are some folks out there.
So I don't know if you, for those of you who are familiar, you can either have watched the recent Venom movies, but your point of reference that I think is a better point of reference, Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire goes emo for a bit.
I don't even know if I remember that.
Okay, in Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire goes emo for a bit, and he puts on the black Spider-Man suit, and he grows his hair out long, and it makes him like, he's like, all of a sudden like, sad. There's this like alien tar creature. I mean, it looks like what came out of Matt's mouth. It's like dark and wispy and made of tar. And it latches onto a Spider-Man suit and turns the Spider-Man suit black. It changes his personality. It's this alien called Venom that...
Venom's an alien?
Yes.
See,
and it's called the symbiote, and it latches onto a person, gives them powers, but it also corrupts them.
It's a parasite.
It's a parasite, yes. It's giving them things, it's helping them, it makes them strong and gives them superpowers.
Yes.
But it also feeds off them and makes them evil. So there's like this like push-pull happening there.
I think that's a great, I mean, not knowing anything about comic books, that sounds like a good comparison
and what
to
it
what we've
seems
seen on
like
the show.
is happening is that Matt's going to go back after that dagger because he's had a taste of Venom, and he's going to become Venom. And he's going to become like Spider-Man with the dagger. And I don't think he's going to
read Spider-Man.
No, it's not. My thing is that he's going to go back to it, and even though it's bad for him, that he's going to become Dagger Man.
Yeah.
And he's going to gain superpowers from the dagger that is also corrupting to him, and there's a push-pull there. And just like Perrin is becoming Wolfman, Matt becomes Daggerman. And
Wolfman and Daggerman.
Wolfman and Daggerman are protecting the dragon while the Aes Sedai are doing... Like, I feel like we're building the Avengers of the Wheel of Time.
Sure.
Where everyone gets superpowers. Perrin's is wolves. Matt's our shadow daggers.
Matt is Venom.
Yeah, Matt is Venom.
Okay.
Perrin is Squirrel Girl, but with wolves instead of squirrels.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know.
There's a lot of your viewers right now that are just like,
yeah, I know. A lot of my viewers are like, no, Patrick gets it.
Yeah, he gets it.
I'm sure, yeah. I think we both agree, and I didn't think about this until the end of the episode. The reason Matt stays back is probably to go get the dagger.
I think that's what I think it is. I think
because it didn't seem until that moment, I assumed Lan still had it, because the last time we saw the dagger, he threw a blanket over it, and that was all we saw of it. So I had no reason to think they had left it behind at the tower. I would actually have thought Moiraine would want to keep it with her. However, the way Matt stayed back, I can think of no better explanation, especially because now Moiraine is gone. Moiraine, who wanted to stop him from getting the dagger back, he waited behind and...
Well, I have to imagine that, like, the Aes Sedai and the White Tower have this, like, vault of forbidden magic items. Like, Matt's about to do a heist on. Because clearly, like, and by the way...
He's good at stealing! You're right about that.
Like, there's, like...
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, he's, I mean, Matt has been shown to be, like, a thief, but I don't know if he's been shown to be a master thief.
No, I just hadn't thought about that skill in relation to the fact that he now wants the dagger. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think in D&D, I think he's going to become an arcane trickster, which is a subtype of rogue.
Sounds
you all don't need, some of your, a very small segment of your viewers are like,
maybe a larger segment than
that tracks, that tracks.
Let's move on to the Oath Rod. I thought you had a really interesting take on the Oath Rod and interesting questions, so I want to touch on that.
So the last time I talked about the Masha dagger, and I was giving my thoughts about that, it was like somehow enchanted with the one power which Min can't touch anymore, and that's why Matt's going mad or whatever. There's some people in the comments that are like doing this thing that you all do where it's just like, but can objects have the one power? Thinking emoji, thinking emoji, thinking emoji. And I'm like, okay, so clearly you all are telling me that objects can't hold the one power.
Well, okay. So, and I think we can talk about this. This is a line they cut. I think they have changed this premise from the books. In book 1, Moiraine has a staff that apparently seems to have power.
Yes.
And at one point, Egwene says, your staff is very powerful. And Moiraine says, things do not have the power. And that is a line that many book readers comment on because even in the books, it seems like a lot of things do have the one power, or at least you could describe them that way.
That brings me to like the Oath Rod. Because if things don't have the one power,
well, they haven't established that on the show, though.
If that is the case, that items can't hold the power, theoretically, the Oath Rod should be able to do that with any stick, that they should just, two people grab hold of any old stick and be able to do that ritual, because it's not the rod itself that is powering the magic. It is the people who are swearing the oaths are powering the magic and providing the magic. So then there shouldn't be anything special about this rod unless the rod has been enchanted with power of its own to enforce it.
But
which would mean the dagger could be enchanted and the rings could be enchanted and there could be lots of magic items out there that are holding the one power.
Right.
And that is my little thing on it, because I was like, why does it need to be a special rod? Couldn't it just be like any stick, like grab hold of two pieces of ribbon? Couldn't it be just like, we're holding a thing together to let our powers flow through and intermingle to swear an oath?
But here's my question for you, and I think it's important. Your notion that objects cannot hold the one power comes from things I have said and things that you have read in the comments from book readers. There's nothing in the show to imply that objects cannot contain the power. Is that right?
The show, if I had not read those comments or heard what you just said, the show would let me think the world is filled with magic items. Like they're like,
I think that's what they're implying.
Fairly clear from the show that we clearly see a magic dagger. I mean, the dagger is magic.
It is, but it's also kind of its own thing.
It is a cursed weapon. It is.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what we're talking about. I'm like, are there objects with powers or are there objects that hold the one power?
It very clearly seemed to suggest that dagger wanted to be taken.
Yes.
The dagger has agency and it wanted to be taken and is clinging to Matt, forming a relationship with Matt. That dagger is enchanted with magic.
Yes. So this all led to a question where you asked, is the Oath Rod...
Is there something special about the Oath Rod? Is the Oath Rod magic?
Is it just a stick?
Or is the spell that they are doing the magic and they just use the ceremonial rod?
It's a vessel.
Is it just or more importantly, is it ceremonial in nature? Is there anything special about it? Or is it just, this is the one we swear it on? Or, I did notice when they were doing it, that the weave was going in and out of those little crevices in a certain way. And it could be that, like, in order for this spell to be completed, it has to be, those weaves have to be, and the rod just helps facilitate that because it's carved into the correct shape. That, like, in order for the oath to be binding, the weave has to go in this certain pattern.
That's interesting.
And the oath rod is carved into that pattern. Anyway.
No, I think that's really interesting. The other question you asked, which I thought was, like, fascinating. Moiraine finishes her oath when she takes this additional oath, which is not one of the 3 oaths. Swan asks her to swear fealty to her and not return until she's invited. Moiraine finishes it with, or else let the creator turn from me and let the darkness consume me. Something like that. And you said after that,
I said,
wait a minute.
What happens to them if they break their oaths? Like, do they, like, burn? Do they die? What happens?
And I was like, you can't break an oath. And then you brought this thing up, which is like, well, then why does she say this or else thing at the end?
Yeah, they clearly put a condition on the oath about what happens if I break it. Let me do this. I vow to do this. Or this will happen. Or my soul gets eaten by the shadows, or whatever it is she says.
From what I understand, no spoilers here, I think this is fair to say, my understanding of the Oath Rod, having read the books, she might as well have said, I swear fealty, I'll come when you beckon me, or else let my head explode on the spot. It wouldn't have mattered, because she physically, and this is the thing, Moiraine says to Egwene in episode 2, I think, we cannot break the oaths. It's not an issue of like, we've made an oath and we stand by it. We physically are unable to break the oaths. But I thought that was a really interesting question because then why bother putting this or else at the end? You can't break it. You actually can't. That was interesting to hear from a non-reader's perspective. Why would you need to say anything else if you physically can't break it?
The other thing I want to say about the Oath Rod, about that scene in particular, it was a wedding.
Yeah.
We didn't, I mean, we haven't...
You're mostly talking about honor and obey. That phrasing's no accident.
That phrasing is very, like, she says, I will honor and obey Swan Sanche. Like that, those are wedding vows she's made. And then she goes in to give her all the names, Swan Sanche, the clever as a pike, strong as the tide. Like, she goes into all of that. Those are, like, she's doing wedding vows. That I will honor and obey you.
You could see that the two of them were, in this moment in front of everyone, privately saying goodbye.
I also feel like that specifically the oath that was made was binding Moiraine to Swan. Like, I'm not binding myself to the Amyrlin Seat, which is what Swan said. Moiraine is saying, I'm not going to obey the Amyrlin Seat, I'm going to obey you. Which I think is also setting up, it makes it feel like that Swan's maybe not going to be in the Amyrlin Seat for very much longer, like that there's going to be some sort of coup or power play happening, and maybe put a different, less kind Amyrlin in that seat was my, like, and Moiraine was, like, hedging her bet. The amount of emotion that she was putting into that, and the word choice of honor and obey made it also seem like I am making a lifetime, permanent, unbreakable commitment to you, Swan Sanche. It felt like wedding vows to me. Like, it read as that to me. Moiraine was committing to her in this very permanent and binding way that I thought was really neat, given the nature of the relationship that we had seen earlier in the episode.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, those words honor and obey triggered something for me, but I don't think I thought of it as like, this is a wedding vow. But when you said that, I was like, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think for Moiraine, having to be exiled, knowing that she hasn't necessarily done anything wrong, this is a very personal moment, and she kind of does it her way.
But like, I don't, like, it's weird to me because we get that scene of her like staring out, like getting one last look at Tar Valon before she's banned.
Oh,
like,
that was gorgeous.
I feel like the exile is in name only, and purposefully so, that like Swan is completely in on it.
Yeah.
And can bring her back whenever she wants. Moiraine has this mission that she has to go complete. The exile seems like a play in the sense that like Moiraine was gonna leave anyway and go do this thing and come back afterwards, and so Swan, I'm sure either Moiraine's gonna die or she's gonna complete her mission and come back. And if she completes her mission, Swan would feel perfectly justified to say, you can come on back. You saved the world from the Dark One. You're welcomed back. You've redeemed yourself in our eyes.
Let's talk about Swan. Mm-hmm. This is the first episode with the Amyrlin. Mm-hmm. You brought up a point that I agree with. I'm not sure we needed the Swan prologue with her as a kid. I like Swan in the books. I love her on the show. So I enjoyed them making a big deal out of her with that prologue. However, like you said, I'm not sure that prologue gave us a whole lot.
I think more what I was saying is I think that little opening sequence was done well. I think it grounds us in her. It shows us her history. It shows us where she comes from and how that interacts later on. It's my same feeling as that I had with episode 5. There is an economy of time at play. We seem to be taking these like sort of decadent dalliances in...
Decadent dalliances.
Yeah, these sort of
decadent dalliances that we keep taking. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we're sort of languishing in this character stuff that I feel like, you know, to me, the purpose of that prologue was to show us that that she unwillingly took on the mantle of Aes Sedai, that was she was happy to remain in her small fishing village, but history had different plans for her. And that echoes what Egwene and Nynaeve are doing. When Nynaeve is saying, I don't want to do this, and she gets to say, well, I didn't want to do it either, but history has called you.
They're not doing this because they want to earn power.
Right.
They're doing this because they have no other choice.
Right. And so we get to see those sort of echoes, and it kind of helps us to understand. However, I think there could have been a more efficient way to transmit that information to us rather than like I don't even know how long that prologue was, 6-7 minutes of screen time showing us this point where she didn't really want to leave home. I'm sure there's going to be people saying like, well, yeah, but it fleshes out her character in such a nice way. It does. It fleshes out her character in a beautiful way, and I think it's highly effective at what it does. I'm just not sure that was the best, most effective use of the opening of several minutes of this episode when we're already on episode 6 of 8 episodes. Like, I agree with you all. Episode 5 did a wonderful job of showing us the deep connection between the warders and the Aes Sedai and what happens when they die and stuff. I just don't know if that was a super effective use of our time when we're already so close to the end of the season to take a minute to really deeply explore that. Yes, they explored it well. To me, I'm watching it, I'm sitting there like my skin is itching, like why are we here? What is the point of this when we only have so much time left? We should be moving at a faster pace.
Yeah, I hear you. Speaking of Swan, let's talk about this moment in the hall. The hall being where there are 3 sitters from each Ajah in the circle, and we noticed that one of the green seats was empty, and you asked what was up with that.
I think it might be Correne's seat.
I think that's the
probably
answer.
Had that chair.
I think that's the only thing that makes sense, is that Correne was a sitter, and they have not replaced that seat
Makes
yet.
it sound like they're babysitters. They're babysitting the Amyrlin.
We know now, after the episode, that Swan and Moiraine are on the same side. Swan is trying to help Moiraine. They have the same goal, which is to find the dragon, protect the dragon.
Well, to find the dragon and try and get them to help save the world rather than break it. Yes. I think that's different from protecting the dragon.
Well, my point being, the reason Swan didn't want to come out and talk about this among the hall was because they're trying to protect the dragon. They don't want this secret to get out because someone might try to hurt the dragon. Right?
Yes.
That comes across, right?
Yes. I would, like, Moiraine also very clearly says, like, I will kill them before I let the Dark One have it.
Sure,
like, she's very clear that she's like, her goal isn't necessarily to protect them, it is to achieve this other end using them.
But as far as their discretion goes, as far as what they're hiding from the rest of the hall,
they are protecting hiding a secret.
They're hiding a secret to also protect themselves, frankly. Right. She says, Moiraine, what is the intention of you questing about? What have you been up to? And Moiraine tells Swan, I cannot say. Then Swan says, cannot say or will not say. And Moiraine is forced to repeat, I cannot say. Swan tells Moiraine, you're gonna have to beg for forgiveness, you're gonna be punished for this. Later, when Swan confronts Moiraine about it, she refers to it as the show that you forced me to put on. And I kind of look at that scene and I'm like, Swan is as much at fault as Moiraine. If I'm Swan, as soon as Moiraine says, I cannot say, I'd be like, how dare you? Kiss the marble. You had better beg for your Amyrlin's forgiveness, divert the attention away from what Moiraine did and towards the fact that she needs to be punished for defying the Amyrlin, which ultimately made sense in that scene, but I felt like Swan didn't do a great job of giving Moiraine an out. She didn't give Moiraine a whole lot of room there, and I kind of thought it was almost more Swan's fault than Moiraine's.
Well, I don't know. I got the impression that Swan was trying to play a game that Moiraine wasn't catching on to.
That Swan expected Moiraine to have an answer that was not prepared.
Right. Like if she said something like, I've been gathering information on threats to the Amyrlin Seat.
Yes, yes.
Like if she had found a way that the Aes Sedai do to
have some wordplay prepared.
Speak the truth without being honest.
Yeah. And she was surprised that Moiraine didn't have that prepared.
Wasn't doing that. And I think that was the point of the second question of like, you're putting me in a tough spot here. Tell me what you're doing. And Moiraine is just like, I don't know what you want me to say. I can't say it.
I just thought cannot or will not was sort of the worst thing Swan could have asked if she's trying to help Moiraine.
Well, what it makes me believe is that this idea that she was like, nope, there is a thing you're supposed to say here. Say it. And Moiraine is just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play the game. And which was weird for me on Moraine's part because we've seen her up to this point be the one that's always in control and always the smartest person in the room. Yeah. And now the Amyrlin is like,
I think the answer
is like, why aren't you playing around with the game?
Right. I think the answer, based on what we know of the show, the most logical answer is Liandrin pushed Swan into asking these questions. Moiraine wasn't ready for it. From what we know of Moiraine, you'd think she would be.
Yeah, there's like a clever way to say, I was tracking rumors of Trolloc invasion and I came across these channelers and da-da-da. I mean, I guess that raises questions about like, well, why didn't you report the movements of the Trollocs?
But again, why didn't she have something prepared?
Yes. And I brought this up to Brian as well. There's this sort of weird thing that happens when, what's her name, Megan? Mygon. When Mygon stands up and says, this is blue business. And to me, what that felt like when you're in Congress or whatever, it's generally agreed when you're doing something that's a matter of public record, if it's a matter of like national security or state secrets, we aren't going to talk about this in public, but it's understood that there is a reason why we are keeping a secret. Everyone's listening right now, so we can't say this in public. We will go into a private session, a national security briefing, committee on national security or whatever.
I like that.
Right, and that the Blue Ajah, who naturally deal in secrets, would necessarily have secrets that maybe don't need to be discussed at the High Council of Ajahs or whatever that's called.
The Hall.
The Hall. That's what Mygon seemed to be suggesting when she says this is blue business. The yellows don't necessarily need to be read in on this. If that's the case, it would seem for the leader of the blues, not just Moiraine to be claiming this privilege, but the leader of the blues, Mygon, to say, hey, no, this is not the place for this. For the Amyrlin, it would be a natural extension to say, Moiraine, you're showing me disrespect here, and I will have a punishment for you, but we will discuss this in private. I understand you don't need to do this here. Moiraine maybe didn't approach that as the most respectful way, so that way you still get the, I'm not playing favorites, I am going to punish you, but I do understand that this is a secret that needs to be, that I should be read into in private. The fact that the Amyrlin is just like, no, everything needs to be discussed in front of everyone, for I am the Amyrlin, seems like a poor way to run your security apparatus, which seems to be the blues.
Yeah, I think we could break that scene down in terms of like things certain characters did that surprised us, but I do think it was a good picture of the Hall, the system they have, whether or not everyone played their cards right. I thought it was fun to see the Hall, and I did like that scene.
I feel like we're finally getting a breakdown of like the purpose of the color coding. Like, blues are the spies, the CIA, they are the ones out kind of trying to keep abreast of what's happening in the world. Well, I mean, they are, but
they kind of are.
In the bathhouse, when they're talking, she's like, ships are disappearing here, Logain's army in the south, the Trollocs in the west. The blues are the ones keeping track of the threats. The green are like the army, the red are like the police, yellows are like the National Health system. And then there's other colors doing, I assume, other important things.
Well, so you asked at one point, what do the white Ajah do? I said, well, we know from Wat Origins that they are keeping the Ajah purposes the same. I wasn't sure they would. The white Ajah is dedicated to logic. And you thought about that, and you were like, so they don't have a whole lot to do they?
It's just funny because it seems like some Ajah are doing a lot. Like if you are the red Ajah, there is a lot for you to do.
There's a purpose.
You have to go investigate, track down, arrest, bring back. You are doing specific. Your day is busy. The green Ajah, who seem to be like this sort of paramilitary force, your day seems to be busy. The blue Ajah's days are busy. If your job is logic, I can't imagine you have a lot to do with your day.
Yeah. And there's also the gray Ajah. They're in charge of negotiations. And I said, that's kind of silly too. And you said, actually, I don't think that, because my point there is it seems like something the blue Ajah would kind of encompass since they're so political. But you brought up a good point that no, that's actually a specific skill.
Yeah, there's a reason why the CIA is also not the State Department. You have one organization out there learning the information and gathering the information and doing all that stuff. And then you have another that is like, I would imagine if the blue Ajah have this reputation as spies, keepers of secrets, that they would not be the most trustworthy group to negotiate with. Or if you have a group that is purely diplomacy.
That's a good point.
It's important to have those two things separate.
Interesting. Because in the books, I always felt a little bit like, couldn't the blue... Ooh. That's our alarm that we got to get ready for our live stream. I'm excited. All right. This is Michael and Kathy, my in-laws, Patrick's parents. They've been watching The Wheel of Time. What did you think of episode 6?
Well, I was a little disturbed they just let the horses go because they had all their tack on and everything.
What's going to happen to those horses?
The horses are going to go off in the woods and just die.
We talked about that too.
We were
What's going to happen to those horses?
Like, I don't think they gave one thought of that. Almost like they think saving the world is more important than those poor horses' life.
Yeah, it was one of our favorite episodes, actually.
I really liked it. I liked 4 was my favorite till this point, and I think 4 is still my favorite, but I really liked this one.
Yeah, this was
great. I think I like this one the best.
I loved seeing the hall. I loved seeing the Amyrlin.
Matt continues to just be such a bad decision maker.
So why did you think he stayed behind at the end?
I think he's afraid. He knows that he dodged a bullet with picking up the haunted sword or whatever, and now he doesn't want to go and take any more chances of getting too close to the Dark One.
We've been calling it the Masha Dagger, as Patrick aptly named it. When Moiraine separated him from the dagger, doing her little healing shindig, the last we saw of it was Lan kind of threw a blanket over it. And I don't think we saw it again. So I kind of thought either Lan or Moiraine was maybe hanging on to it. At the end of that episode, the way Matt stayed back, I now think the dagger is still in the White Tower, and Matt stayed behind to go get it. Because as long as Moiraine was around, she wasn't going to let him do that.
Yeah.
I think.
They make this big deal about once you've touched the one power and then you're cut off from it, you kind of lose this will to live. Specifically with the dagger, Moiraine says he was feeding off of it as much as it was feeding off of him. Like there was this sort of symbiotic relationship happening there. Even though he knows it's bad or evil when he's cut off from it, like a heroin addict or a meth addict, you know it's bad, but like he's kind of addicted to what it is.
I don't see that as being the one power. Maybe I'm missing this.
I don't know if it is. It
but
could be...
like to me, what that represented was not the one power. It was the dark power, right?
It was like that thing that you saw in Shudder Logoth.
Yeah, because that is a different thing. It feels to me like the one power. Every time I've ever seen it accessed and channeled, it looks like it's represented as these wisps of cloud and light, right? Where this was represented different, which makes me think it's not the one power. It's
it may not be it may not be the one power, but the same sort of addiction, psychological mechanism of sort of becoming addicted to it. Yeah, I think might still be at play.
Maybe he doesn't.
So do you think he's then stayed back to get the dagger?
That's what I think. I think the reason Moiraine made it a point to say, I've separated him from it, but if he gets his hands on it again, we're going to be in trouble, or there may be no going back. I think she pointed that out because
he's going to get his hands on it.
He's going to do what he can to get his hands on it. I wasn't aware of the fact that it had been left behind until I saw Matt stay behind, and then I thought that. So I don't know. I definitely was wondering about those horses. I was like, what are you doing?
All right, so every indication is Matt didn't go through, right? Yeah. Any chance they're going to go open up the other ones and somehow they reopened it, or he somehow at the last second got a foot in or did something to get himself
I think he's going to stay on the other side.
Very cheap narratively.
She said no return.
there's no going back.
Maybe there's a purpose for him on the other side, right?
If that's the case, I would say 95% sure Matt's not the dragon. He's not part of the dragon. He's going back. Somehow he will die as this thing progresses because he'll do something to sacrifice himself.
Because he's not making the right choices.
He's making bad decisions.
Sacrifice himself for the others of the world. The one redeeming decision he ever makes in his life. The red leader, what's her name again?
Leandrin.
Leandrin. I want to find out who this guy is that she's got this thing going with, because that's a big deal.
In North Harbor?
How great is that?
It wasn't that she just said, I know your secret. It's that I'm going to go tell your sisters, and we all know what they're going to do to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only will I ruin you, I will turn your sisters against you.
That's true.
Your red sisters.
And they're going to go tear your boyfriend to pieces.
Yeah, I absolutely think what she's saying is they will kill him.
Yeah, which feels weird, but...
You know, that is, at this point, I feel like, Pumpkin is scratching the trash can.
Something in there she wants.
I avoid talking about anything, having read the books, that might spoil anyone, but things that have been changed, I feel like I can bring up that have clearly been changed on the show. That's not referenced in the books, that if a red sister has a relationship with a man, they then kill him, but I see it. I loved that moment of Moiraine
telling her off and putting her in her
Leandrin
place. It's the first time you ever see her go like, holy crap, I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
But I also think she knows there's more between the two of them, Moiraine and
the
Swan.
Yeah, I don't know if she knows specifically.
Well, either that or she just suspects, hey, she used to be blue, so that's why she's favoring you.
I think there's something there that...
But we never got to see what her punishment is. That's what I want to know, too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she's supposed to have consequences as well for her. And I can't believe that Amyrlin isn't going to drop the hammer on her somehow.
Yeah.
Because she has to know she's a nasty witch. I don't want to ask you everything, but in the books, does it talk about her punishment?
No, I mean, Leandrin has sort of a different story, so it would be hard to compare.
Look, if we don't see consequences from her, I'm going to be unhappy. You sit there and you tell both of them to go back, and I'm getting ready to decide what I'm going to do to you, and only one of them we get to see.
Well, I feel like we may not get to see it just because I don't think we're going to be at the White Tower for the rest of the season. I think we're now doing a different
beyond that.
I agree.
It doesn't really matter.
Well, that's ridiculous, though. They should have at least said, as soon as they exiled her, they should have looked over at Leandrin and said, and by the way,
you're cleaning dishes.
Although if say season 2 were to open up with Leandrin scrubbing pots, I'd be happy to see it that way too.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Save it for the next time we come back.
Outside the White Tower with a toothbrush.
Absolutely. King with a tiny little toothbrush. That's it's the least she deserves.
Now, here's the next big thing: is the dragging 4 people, 5 people, or 1 person?
We didn't talk about that.
And I think they're leading us. They're setting you up to believe it. It may be
more than one.
It may be more than one. I can't answer.
I know you can't because it's in the book.
They could be making certain choices that are different from the book, so I don't know.
But you do know what the books are, and you don't want to tell us.
I don't want to say what's in the books, but it feels totally possible that they would change the scenario for the show. They've already changed plenty for the show, and it makes sense to me. The possibilities of who is the dragon, even having read the books, I can see them making changes. So I don't know for sure.
I think it's almost time to start reading the books.
I almost feel like
I think we might want to get the books, because if we're only going through book 1 right now that we've watched this season, will get us up to speed on book 1.
You're a reader, so you would love to read the books, but also Rosamund Pike has recorded the audiobook of book 1.
Oh, so maybe we'll do that. That would be really good, I think.
She's a great reader. It's fun to listen to.
Back to Moiraine, I think they told a little bit about her backstory, too. That maybe why a lot of people don't like her. That she was nobility before, right?
This was the first time, I guess, they've really drawn attention to that.
Well,
maybe it's your nobility that makes you look down on me.
But there was also a hint. It was the second episode. They're approaching the White Cloaks, and she says to them, "I am a woman of nobility passing through to white." Like she makes
very good. She
does say that.
Would not be able to say if it wasn't true.
Yeah.
Or no, she says, "I'm a woman." Did she say I'm a woman from a fallen house, or I'm a woman of?
Yes.
Is that what she said, a fallen house?
Yes. She makes some sort of reference to the fact that she is of nobility, or was of nobility, but isn't anymore. If that's the story for the White Cloaks, it would have to be true for her to say it. Her briefing them on that, they made reference to that very early on, that she has some sort of noble background.
There's one thing I've missed out on. I can't answer it very clearly. These battles going to the south, and Logain's armies have gathered all these forces, right? That's not the king that tried to attack the sisters.
Logain is the male channeler, the false dragon.
So Logain is the one that they just had, right? The one that they they sentenced to live.
Yes.
Sentenced to live with his madness. He was building this army up in the south
to come after the Aes Sedai.
Aes Sedai. wasn't he quite a little cocky thing right there in front of the Amyrlin? And I loved her punishment.
Yes. I think Loghain's intention was to say enough angering things to like kind of to provoke her to sentence him to death. Not thinking through, the Amyrlin realizes that it would be worse for you to live. He ultimately provoked her to give him the worst possible punishment, which is not what he wanted.
Right. If he had just thrown himself on her mercy of her court and said, look, she would have had mercy on him and killed him.
Yeah. He thought he was getting her to kill him, but ultimately she did worse. And he didn't, I don't think, expect that.
That was good. That was good. I just now decided I don't want to see Leandro cleaning the White Tower. I think she needs to spend 3 days in the cell with Loghain.
Oh, they'd be best friends.
That wouldn't be
that would go great.
They'd get along. They'd be playing cards.
Yeah, right.
I think what we're going to do is we're going to find out. They each have sort of a pivotal role to play supporting the dragon. I think the dragon is going to be one of them, and I think it's probably going to be Rand, because he's the most bland of them so far.
Right, he's got
nothing going for
nothing.
him.
Yeah.
No.
You don't even know.
There was that moment he opened a really heavy door.
Yeah, he broke the door.
So far,
that's the only thing.
Perrin's got wolf powers. Matt's got a shadow dagger. Egwene has got these great channeling powers. Nynaeve is the most powerful healer in 1,000 years, and Rand opened a heavy door. There's just not a lot there for him.
Egwene doesn't really show strong channeling power. She threw a little fireball over at the White Cloak.
I think they're setting her up, though. When they found Loghain, Lan said to Moiraine, is he as powerful as Egwene? And she goes, I can't tell yet. They're giving us indication that Egwene is a powerful channeler. Nynaeve might be stronger in certain aspects. Perrin has wolf summoning abilities. Matt has this shadow dagger thing going on, and Rand can open heavy doors. And
I don't see how the shadow dagger thing puts him in the same class as the other.
Well, because I think here's the thing:
he's a thief who made a bad choice.
She says to Rand when they're talking about it, Matt is more powerful than he has any right to be. Under normal circumstances, that dagger would have consumed him weeks ago. And the fact that she said he's feeding off of it.
She doesn't say he has more power. She said he's stronger.
He's stronger than he has any right to be. That's right. She indicates that there is something about Matt that has enabled him to survive this encounter with the dagger. And it makes me think that Matt's going to go on this journey to become sort of like a shadow warrior, a shadow ninja with this dagger, that he's going to gain some sort of power from it, something that he maybe shouldn't have initially done, but he's going to become some sort of powerful shadow dagger warrior or whatever. And Perrin's going to become the wolf man. Egwene is going to be this powerful wizard, and Nynaeve is going to be this great healer. That leaves Rand to be the dragon. And
yes, I agree. I agree with that.
Either powers combined, they will defeat the dark. Like, to me, that's what
Captain
seems
Dragon.
To be. Yeah, they're Captain Dragon. They're gonna be the support staff for Rand, who is the dragon. I think we're just gonna continue to see the other four kind of growing and changing in these unique and special ways, while Rand opens heavy doors. And maybe what we're gonna see is that the Dark One is behind a very heavy door.
Except Rand.
I did think it was interesting. Moiraine said, and we can, in theory, believe her, she didn't know Nynaeve could channel. Because she did seem to know that Egwene could channel.
She didn't know Egwene could channel. She suspected it.
Yeah. She suspected, but didn't know for sure.
I guess it was that scene where she's teaching her with the Kisiera, the blue gem, and she says, the power inside you, what do you call it? It felt very much like she knows.
No, here's what I will say. To me, that what the wisdoms do with speaking to the wind or listening to the wind.
Right.
Yeah.
There are wisdoms that seem to have this ability to listen to the wind.
Yes.
An indication that you are capable of channeling.
And Moiraine is used to recognizing that.
Yes. Whether or not she knew Nynaeve could listen to the wind, I'm sure she suspected she could. She was like a respected
she would
wisdom.
Have to.
I think she knew Egwene could listen to the wind.
I think she was more interested in Egwene because Egwene fit into the age group that she was looking
for
to fit these criteria. For Moiraine not to know that Nynaeve is a powerful channeler was interesting to me.
She did not say,
she said she had suspicions.
She had suspicions.
Yeah,
she did not know.
Suspected.
But I think Moiraine was also blinded by the fact that she's not the right age.
Right.
Well, when they ask about, when Lan asks Moiraine, is Loghain as strong as Egwene? Moiraine says, I don't know. That says to me, Moiraine cannot tell how strong a woman is, at least at this point in their training. Maybe it changes once they've trained. That was interesting because I didn't know what the rules on that in the show would be. This is really fun. I love this episode. I love talking about it.
We've got 2 episodes or 3 left.
2, I think.
They better have 2 really big episodes to end with.
I believe they're called The Dark Along the Ways is the next one, and the finale is The Eye of the World.
Actually, make it there. Yeah.
They make it there. Are there dangers along the way before they get there?
Clearly,
They're
the
going
horses
through the
would not
waves.
have survived. They were very clear that those horses could not go.
Apparently, it's a better thing for the horses to just run off and see what happens.
Off.
So,
Run away. Interesting. So we'll see.
What's the other thing that's with him? Not the troll, but
The ogre.
Ogre. Yeah.
I'm loving
I
it.
think his goose is cooked.
Why?
Because he's gonna get between them and the dark one. He is definitely not the
dragon.
Sounds like is he there to show him the way?
I don't know.
That's kind of what I got
understand
to
the
think,
why.
that the Ogier have a special connection with the ways.
where Moiraine summons him and he says,
I'm pretty sure
thank
the
you.
Ogier's gonna die.
No, he's just gonna lead them to there, and he's gonna be on his way.
He'll be dead.
No comment.
Do you think he'll hold the door? That's
He'll
a game
do-
of
I
Thrones.
think if anyone
You all didn't
holds
watch
the
Game
door
of
on this
Thrones,
show,
so you
they're
don't
going to get
get
into
that
trouble.
reference, yeah.
There were some interesting Game of Thrones references. They talked about a three-headed dragon in this
A
episode.
multi-headed dragon.
Yeah, she said multi-headed.
A three-headed
multi-headed
dragon.
dragon.
Multi-headed dragon.
Multi-headed. Oh, I just heard three because of Game of Thrones. That's funny. Interesting. But that was an idea they explored in Game of Thrones, so that was interesting.
Didn't
All right.
pan out, but they explored.
Didn't pan out, but they sure thought about it.
Anyway,
I love talking about this with you. Thank you for watching it. This is like
Oh, you're
problem.
I'm having
welcome.
the time of my life. We're going to say walk in the light, and you're going to say keep it wheel. Ready?
Okay.
Walk in the light.
And keep
Keep
it
it
real.
That was so good. That was perfect.
they did it. That was like really good.
That was really the best one we've had. I don't think we brought this up yet, and it's such a good point. If you're punishing someone who the thing they've done wrong is they are gallivanting throughout the world, doing whatever they want, not checking in with anyone, is it a logical punishment to exile that person so that now they're free to do whatever they want
And not check in with
and
anyone.
not check in with anyone?
I feel like, you know what I feel like?
It was a good
You
point.
know what it feels like? It feels like maybe the Amyrlin didn't consult the white Ajah before she
This is where we need the white
Feels like the
Ajah.
White Ajah was like, oh, this is not a logical punishment.
It just goes to show that that white Ajah is
They're
not.
not pulling their weight.
Yeah, they're not pulling their weight.